Welcome to So Ama Media. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like what you see.
So sit back, relax, kick your feet up, and most of all enjoy. Much love.
Jan Tregeagle, also Tregeagle Jan, is the ghost of a 17th century sinner from Cornwall, England, who was summoned from the grave and set to eternal and fruitless tasks. A historical Jan Tregeagle existed. He was a local magistrate, stern and unpopular, who used his position to amass a fortune. According to legend, he accomplished this by forgery, fraud, seizing the estates of orphans, and selling his soul to the devil. He is also alleged to have murdered his wife and children, but no historical proof of this exists. Worried about his after-death fate, Tregeagle is said to have bribed local clergy so that it could be buried on consecrated ground in St. Breck's churchyard. However, several years after his death, he was summoned from the grave, and his eternal travail began. Legends differ as to the fate of Tregeagle. According to one story, a legal dispute arose between two families over ownership of a piece of land near Bodmin. Tregeagle had served as lawyer to one of the parties in the dispute and had fraudulently obtained title to the land himself. The dispute was taken to the Bodmin assizes. There, the defendant produced Tregeagle's ghost as a witness, which he had called up from the grave. The ghost testified that the defendant had been defrauded, and the jury found in the man's favor. But the defendant refused to return Tregeagle's ghost to the grave, claiming that calling him up had been so difficult and dreadful, he wanted nothing further to do with the matter. The clergy were consulted and decided that in order to save Tregeagle's soul from the clutches of the devil, they would have to keep the ghost busy for eternity. Tregeagle was bound by spells and dispatched to Dozen Mary Pool, a supposedly bottomless lake. It now often dries out during hot and dry summers. He was to empty the lake with a leaky limpet shell. A pack of wished hounds kept him at his task. One night, terrified by a storm, Tregeagle ran away. He was pursued by the baying, headless hounds all across Bodmin Moor. Tregeagle reached a chapel at Roche Rock, but only managed to stick his head in the window. When the hellhounds reached him, his screams could be heard for miles. After several days of torment, he was rescued by the priest of the rock, who, with two saints, led him to Padstow Beach. There, Tregeagle was set to weaving ropes from sand. The incoming tide always destroyed his efforts, and his howling could be heard far and wide. He became such a nuisance that St. Petrock, Padstow's patron saint, forced him to move on to Barepper near Helston. There Tregeagle was assigned to empty Barepper Beach of sand, carrying it sack by sack across the estuary of the Low and dumping it at Porthleven. The tide once again destroyed his efforts. While he was crossing the estuary, a demon tripped him and he spilled his sand. It formed a ridge, now known as Low Bar, that blocked the harbor. The residents of Helston were angry to lose their harbor, and they shackled Tregeagle and packed him off the land's end at the very tip of Cornwall. He was told to sweep the sand from Porthcurno Cave into Mill Bay, an impossible task due to the tides. Tregeagle's howls of protest are still heard whenever a gale rages and throws sand back on the beach. In another version of the tale, the court dispute concerned a loan between two men witnessed by Tregeagle while alive. The debtor denied receiving the loan and declared in court that if Tregeagle had indeed witnessed the deal, he should come and declare it. To the court's astonishment, Tregeagle's ghost suddenly appeared and set the record straight. He told the debtor it would not be so easy to send him back to the grave. Tregeagle then followed the man everywhere. Finally, the harried man sought the help of clergy and exorcists. They drew a magic circle around the man, and the spirit of Tregeagle appeared in the form of a black bull and tried to get at him, but was prevented by the circle. While a parson read holy words, Tregeagle became increasingly gentle. Finally, he allowed himself to be bound with hempen cord and led away to Gwenver Cove. There the exorcist assigned him to making a truss of sand, to be bound with ropes of sand, and then carried to Carn Over. This was an impossible task, but Tregeagle labored at it until one cold winter when he got an idea. He poured water from Velandreth Brook over the truss. It froze, and he was able to carry it to Carn Over, freed from his bondage. Tregeagle flew at once back to the man who had summoned him from the grave, and would have attacked him had not the man had the fortune to have an innocent child in his arms. The man sent for the clergy, who once again succeeded in binding Tregeagle. They returned him to Gwember Cove and assigned him the same task, but prohibited him from going near fresh water. Tregeagle still labors away on the shores of Whitsand Bay, whenever a northern storm rolls in and destroys his work. His howls are heard throughout the countryside. Today in Cornwall, the term Tregeagle is applied to anyone who blusters and protests and to children who squall.
Thanks for watching this video. I hope you come back soon. So till the next time, much love.